everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Safety Brief. As many of you are aware, the situation in Lebanon is still developing. While we don't have all the details yet, it has certainly raised some serious concerns about cybersecurity. This incident definitely highlights the vulnerabilities we face in our increasingly connected world and how dangerous cyber warfare can truly be. I want to welcome Mike and Matt and thank them for being here as always. They have been providing some great insights, facts, and examples since day one of the safety brief. So I'm happy to both have you both here today.
Thanks for having us, Elizabeth.
Always. So in today's live stream, we'll provide valuable insights on cybersecurity awareness and address some pressing questions surrounding this recent attack. We'll be discussing various aspects of cybersecurity, including internal cyber attacks, supply chain vulnerabilities, and the risk associated with IoT and mobile devices. So let's explore how these elements intertwine and what we can do to protect ourselves and our organization. Let's begin by examining the recent event in Lebanon and provide some educated guesses about what actually transpired. Mike, do you want to kick us off for this one?
Yeah, most definitely, Elizabeth, and I appreciate it. Not very often do we get a current event that really comes close to cyber attacks, cyber awareness, and where they can be relevant. So we always try to publish a topic, and then if something else comes out that's maybe more relevant or more pressing, where we may be able to provide more value, we of course pivot. So as of today, it's September 19th, 2024, and if you're catching the pre-recording or the recording rather after the fact on the various audio-only platforms, what we're referencing is this past Tuesday, about 48 hours ago, there were attacks in Lebanon, in which case there were originally beepers, pagers. I say beepers and pagers because when I told somebody that there was some form of attack based on beepers, someone's like, what's a beeper? I don't even know what a beeper is. So I felt aged in that moment, but this is what we had prior to mobile phones in the form of being able to contact somebody, get a phone number to show up, and that's the number to call back. But needless to say, it is a mobile device used for communication. I'll just leave it at that. And so, long story short, they're smaller than most bifold wallets, trifold wallets. They are typically either on a hip belt clip or in someone's pocket. But what we saw is some form of coordinated, executed attack where these were exploding. Now, there were videos being circulated. There are a lot of information being circulated. And in these instances where it's rapidly evolving information, it's somewhat difficult to discern between what is snake oil and what is truth, and what is boots on the ground intel, and what is misinformation, right? And this is the battle we all face and fight all the time. So what we know thus far is there was a coordinated, simultaneous attack on multiple of these devices. When we say multiple, up to thousands of these devices. And no less than 24 hours later, which is at the time of us going live with this and talking about it, is 24 hours ago, we now see the same potential attack type with radios, walkie-talkies, in the form of same concept. They're being carried around. They're being brought to wherever they are being used. Again, Safety Brief is not here to make any moral claim or excuse or unexcuse or, again, we're examining the events that took place and evaluating what is the cyber repercussions or what is the implications. And so long story short, the current data as it's pointed to, and I know Matt's been going down all the rabbit holes as he does in good fashion, is that this is a supply chain attack of physical kinetic form, meaning as of what we know today, there is no form of what we know today. No form of malicious code or malicious malware or firmware that made them overheat or made them explode. I've had a lot of people text me saying, can my phone explode? Can my car battery explode? There's so many questions that are good, but what we're seeing currently is a case of physical sabotage in the act of war and active warfare, right? And so that's currently what we're seeing. There are absolutely cybersecurity repercussions around supply chain and where you source your devices that are noble topics, worthy topics that apply to almost everybody watching this. But that's the summary as it's taken place the past 48 hours from my perspective. But Matt, any thoughts?
This is possibly the most clear-cut case of a supply chain attack that you will ever see. You guys thought that Sunburst was bad? Yeah, that's nothing. Now, the fun part about this, nobody had any idea. Sorry, Fluffy, I stepped on you. Um, Nobody had any idea how exactly this could have, in theory, occurred. Well, since we've had time, people have been reaching out. They've been doing their diligence on how exactly this could have occurred. The one thing that I can tell you is when you are in the line of work that these people were in, that had things that go boom, they don't want anything trackable, which means you're using dinosaur age technology, stuff that doesn't have any kind of GPS co-location, no transmitter, no ability for it to connect to anything aside from a basic signal. We're talking almost back to the early 90s pagers that everybody thought they were so cool when they were carrying around that it looked like a little brick. Well, this is kind of interesting how that comes about. And the pagers are normally sourced from a company in Taiwan. Well, they reached out to the company in Taiwan. The company in Taiwan said, well, we didn't make them. We didn't make those pagers. So come to find out, looks as though there's a company in Hungary that actually made the pagers and put the company's logo on them. So a complete third party, just like you would expect with a supply chain attack, made it look as legitimate as possible and got it into people's hands. And that's exactly how a supply chain attack works. It's taking something that looks completely legitimate, that you would think, hey, this is absolutely FileZilla. There could be nothing wrong with this whatsoever. Come to find out, it's got a Trojan built into it because they manipulated the installer package. Everything installs as it normally would, but they put a little code in there saying, oh, you need to install this so that the program's able to function. Kind of like the Microsoft Visual C++ redistributable packages that everybody loves to use. Since Microsoft was so nice of using those, people have become accustomed to just hitting OK when those pop up. Well, there's your supply chain attack right there. You take a package, you modify it, you put something malicious in there, it installs, and because people are trained to just hit OK or hit accept, it goes through. There's no problem, no concern, no nothing. Then you start seeing all of the network communication that shouldn't happen. Then you start seeing things show up on machines that shouldn't be there. And then shortly after that, you find that you have a lovely screen saying all your stuff has been encrypted. Or even worse, and I'm just saying this is what I would do. I wouldn't even tell people they were encrypted. There's no reason to encrypt them. They're going to sell the data anyways. Why destroy the data and, put people out? You're going to deal with insurance. They're going to pay you the bare minimum that, could be paid. You're going to turn around and sell it on the dark web anyways for exponentially more. You're already in there. Why let them know? Why stop your flow of information? That's what a supply chain attack is. You want to keep going down the chain.
I think another thing to keep in mind too is a man in the middle type of attack.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where, you know, the malicious actor can secretly intercept your package or file or whatever it may be in question. But that's also something that should be looked out for as well. Because even though you're purchasing from a reputable source and you're purchasing from a known company, things can still happen. So, and I'm
And
glad that you
nowadays, it's not even suspicious if a package takes longer to get there.
know.
With all of the issues that people have had with logistics, with all of the storms and the weird weather and all that stuff that cause delays, it's not unusual if you get a package and then it gets delayed for 2, 3, 4 days. In that entire time, it's not actually delayed. It's somebody is manipulating the package before they let it continue through and ship.
Mhm.
I think it. I mean, it's honestly, it's no different. If you want to look at a man in the middle attack, men in the middle attacks are clearly outlined. If you ever watch any of those customs shows they have on Netflix, how to catch a smuggler. They do what they call controlled delivery. They intercept a package, they take the nasty stuff out and put something in there that's fake. And then they take and they deliver that to ensure the delivery and the person receives the package. By doing that, they have now become the man in the middle. They control the package and they control when the delivery actually occurs. So it's basically, I mean, everybody thinks that it's adversarial, but sometimes it can be used for good. And that's something that should be looked at. I mean, I can't think of any time that a supply chain attack has been used for good, but man in the middle has been.
Yeah.
Many times.
And, Mike, you brought up a really good question that we've been seeing all over the place, which is, will my phone explode? So let's address this and provide a little bit of reassurance for our listeners or viewers. Can overheating in IoT or mobile devices occur due to security vulnerabilities that could be exploited in a supply chain attack? And if so, how?
Is it a Samsung? You're muted. You're still muted.
I got you. Oh, no, it won't let me.
When you have a pending share, you can't click anything else. That's
really?
Yeah, apparently.
Well, there's a feature request to send it to
a couple of things. Yeah, I had this staged, and I'm like, please unmute me. But anyway, so long story short, two things here. One, can phone batteries, any form of batteries, IoT, overheat? Yes, definitely from the factory. Okay, so there's an overheating risk regardless of any form of lithium-ion battery. There is a reason why when you go to the airport, when you travel, they say, do you have any lithium-ion batteries in your checked luggage, right? Because if something happens and that's at the base of the plane where there is fuel, where there is cargo, and et cetera, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Part two. As Matt had said, and as I was saying when I was muted, there was recent events very relevant to this on Samsung Note phones, Samsung phones specific to mobile devices, where they were just exploding and they didn't know what they were going on. That was an overheating issue. You'd see the battery expand because of the combustion, because of everything going on there. So certainly, the question being posed is it feasible or is it possible to upload malicious code that forcibly may overheat or run a process? And certainly in theory it's true, right? All you have to do is simply run a few processes enough to create an overheating issue to where those processes never stop. They keep running, right? No different than anything. And we've seen this in the form of HVAC systems and IoT attacks that have targeted climate control. So if you want to destroy some data in a data center, people can think, well, you go through the front door, you tear down the whatever. But if you can compromise the safety of the environment where that data is being stored, how can you do that? Well, servers get hot. They need climate control. They need cooling systems, things of that nature. So it's relevant because certainly this type of attack is possible. In this instance, within the scope of Lebanon and Syria and what's happened this week, we don't see that as currently, with the current information we have in front of us presently available, we don't see that to be the case. Now, the reason I started this screen share is because the topic that has been brought up a number of times here is supply chain. And I know every single person watching this is going to look at this and say, there's really no big difference between the two things in front of me. It's that corporate, that's that meme with Pam from The Office. It's like corporate wants you to identify the difference between these two images. And
they're the same image.
Difference. So here's what the difference is. On the left, you have an OEM Apple cable, and on the right, you have whatever Amazon's selling for $7, right? When I say Amazon, I mean
anyone.
Malisi or whatever this brand is that is probably not United States based, but it is what it is. What's the point? 99% of all consumers are going to go on the right and see, I can get 4 cables for the price, half the price of one. I'm just going to do it. They aren't thinking about supply chain. They aren't thinking about something that car enthusiasts will know very much about, and that's called OEM, original manufacturer parts, right? Like there are things that you need to buy from the manufacturer to ensure, number one, a security risk mitigation as well as a performance risk mitigation. Okay, if you buy parts, aftermarket parts for your car that are not produced by the manufacturer, you run the risk of compatibility. You run the risk of, hey, we didn't test this car. We didn't test the car's safety, this car's performance with this part. We certified the parts that we tested it with. Right? There's 100,000, 100 million parts that we've tested. This one we have not, right? And so that's where you can void warranties. That's where if you even do a laptop battery swap, back in the day when you can do that, you would void the warranty if you did that. So what's my point? My point is, for practically where this Lebanon and Syria case comes in, Matt had talked about the manufacturer in Hungary, which was just slapping on labels to make it look legitimate that these pagers were from a certain location. There is nothing indistinguishable visually by these two cables. I mean, you can get wall chargers, you can get charging cables. Obviously, that you can go down the rabbit hole that there are malicious cables with man-in-the-middle software built in. But what
Yep.
we're talking about here is merely just, where do you buy your stuff? Okay? And I wish and I long for, and I don't know the day that it'll ever happen, but Amazon having a made in the United States or made in the USA toggled a filter by parts and pieces that are either OEM to those that are obviously building them in the United States, or at least have some idea of where these parts are being sourced from. Because, again, anybody can come on here on Amazon, juice up to 16,000 ratings that are 5 stars, and most consumers, I know my family, are going to look at, well, what's the reviews? How is it rated? If it's rated good, well, guess what?
Many
You
of
go
them
in
are
here,
bots, which is
good deal,
Yeah.
does wonders, work great, best cords. You know, it's like, who knows if this is legitimate or not. But my point is that where you today source your hardware and your technology, this can go from Amazon cables versus Apple cables, and every consumer right now is most likely going to say, well, I can't afford $20 a cable. I need a couple. I need to buy one for me, one for my wife, one for my spouse, whatever it is, right? And so financially, I get it, but there is something to be said about where you're sourcing your stuff. Facebook Marketplace. Okay, you're going to go to Facebook Marketplace. What are you buying? Well, you can buy a lawnmower, you can buy an iPhone, you can buy a MacBook, you can buy a laptop. You have no certainty over the integrity of that thing you're buying because it's through a third party. It's through a third party reseller. It's not from the original manufacturer. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that consumers today, mostly due to economic temperature and everything going on, are driven by cost. Cost, as with the promise of, these images really make me giggle, right? Like, more durable, safer, faster, raw, right? Like, all good. 5 times more durable than ours versus others. And you get into these and it's kind of fun. Yeah, here you go. The products meet all Apple products' performance standards, which ensures to provide customers steady, high quality products and completely compatibility, right? Like, okay, let's ask obvious questions here, right? Like, are these built in the United States? No. Adopts connector C48, right? Like, so it's not that they're not legitimate if they're not built in the United States. A lot of these things, even with Apple, are sourced overseas. The things you have to ask yourself are, 90% of people would go to Amazon, hit add to cart, and just buy this without even looking. And so just like we have trained our eyes and trained our minds to look at a phishing email, evaluate if it's legitimate, things like that, we need to do the same when we're buying refurbished mobile phones, refurbished technology. We need to look at the source of where these things are coming from, in the same way that, no, most of them will not have explosives embedded in them, but we ought to question the source of which the things we buy and trust.
They don't have to have an explosive embedded in them.
That's
Pull
right.
up that image again. Can you go to the section where it's split apart? I think
Yeah,
it's one
that's a
lower,
great
right
image
there.
because
Go
that's
down
where
2, Mike. Go down 2. Go down. No, a little bit further. One more. Not that one. That
the
one.
USB, yeah,
Okay. So right here, do you see all of that space behind that lovely Thunderbolt, Lightning, whatever the crap they call that connector?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you do realize that it is extremely possible to put a very tiny payload there that makes this a bad USB device. It's very simple. It's been done many times before.
Yep.
This is something where, if you wanted to be malicious, you'd build one of these, you have it plugged into a computer that's in like a public area.
Airports.
Airports, actually, there's another way to do it in an airport, which is even scarier. But you'd plug this in like if you're at a convention.
Right.
Get into a convention, pop this into a machine that's sitting there, and everybody thinks, oh, it's innocuous. It's just a USB charging port. You plug it in, it's running stuff on the back end and stealing everything off of your machine. Now,
Mm-hmm.
you can make it even one step further, and you don't have to involve the machine itself, because some of these, as long as it's plugged in and it has power, you can hide a little Wi-Fi module inside that USB. And then you can just connect to it with your device, and you just have to be sitting near it. It's the same thing you can do in the airport. What they're doing in the airport is they're actually going to the power outlets, and mind you, this takes some guts to do while you're in an airport. Um, they're going to the airports and they are taking the plates off where you can plug in to charge your devices because they have USB ports that are openly available. And what they're actually doing is they're putting modules in those so that anybody that plugs in, it's a wireless connection.
Right.
And it's got not only a fake wireless connection that looks exactly like the wireless connections that are named in the airport, but it gives them a wireless connection when your device is plugged in as well.
Hmm.
So, I mean, there's some extremely stealthy ways that they can get your data, which is why you really should not plug in a public area at all. Power banks are cheap, ladies
Right.
and gentlemen. I'm going to just throw that out there. Power banks are cheap. You can buy a power bank and keep it with you. Anchor makes fantastic power banks. Okay? You can trust Anchor. Anchor is awesome. That top one right there is a beast. Also has a really cool screen. I'm drawn to things that have really cool screens. Um, Mike has seen my flashlight that has a really cool screen. Not only is it super bright and will blind everybody at least a mile away, it has a cool screen. But Anchor makes some fantastic technology. They're trusted, they validate all of their stuff, and you can carry them with you. A lot of the time, they actually make TSA friendly power banks that you can actually take, put in your bag, and not have to worry about juicing up when you're at the airport because guess what? You've got your own power with you. You don't have to sit next to somebody that may be stinky. You don't have to try and cram yourself into a terribly located power supply. You got your own stuff. Go chill, relax, pull a Tom Hanks and take up a few seats and take a nap while you're charging. You're good.
Think of it this way, you're not gonna share a sandwich with a stranger, so why would you share your phone and all the information on it?
Have you
The
asked a
same
5 year
concept.
old that lately? Because many of them would voluntarily just share the sandwich with the stranger.
They're not gonna share,
And
they're gonna
that's why we
take
don't
it.
let 5-year-olds establish
The
security
phones.
policy. That's
Yeah.
right.
Exactly.
That's right.
But most
But
people that implement policy are about the equivalence of a 5 year old. So there you go.
another type of attack that gets forgot about a lot is internal attacks. It can play a significant role in supply chain vulnerabilities. So, how can internal cyber attacks facilitate these risks, and what preventative measures can organizations take?
It's all about social engineering at that point. If you're going with an internal attack, then somebody's been compromised.
Hmm.
That's the only way you're getting inside the building is if somebody lets you inside the building. So somebody somewhere did something they shouldn't have done, or as what I like to be, or as what I've been told, loose lips sink ships. So you
Well, and
have
it's
to
not
shore up.
always on purpose. It could
No,
just
it's not
be
always
someone
on
who's
purpose.
uneducated as well, like we saw
It
just
could be. It
recently.
could be, but that's why you make sure that you have the security controls in place that somebody that might be a potato doesn't have the level of access that would be needed for somebody to, oh, I don't know, manipulate that, take advantage of it, and then bring down your entire company. The other thing is understanding that humans are human.
Yeah.
We are inherently broken people. We have things called emotions that make us vulnerable to everything known to man. Somebody that can manipulate those emotions has the upper hand in any situation, which is why you'll find that most threat actors are sociopaths. They have the capability to manipulate those emotions while not showing any of their own. Or they'll know exactly how to act to make you think that they're feeling a certain way.
Little Spocks.
Yeah, there's lovely little things that they can actually do, but that's the thing. When you start to research, and a lot of the what I think should happen in a lot of organizations is there should be some level of psychological teaching. You need to understand at least a little bit of psychology if you're in a professional workplace. So, I mean, understanding how a person arrives at a solution, or how a person's emotions can make them act differently in different situations, can help you to understand how to control your own emotions
Mhm.
and let you sit there and think, hey, this person's saying all these things, but do they actually, are they doing that just to try and get me to behave a certain way that they want me to behave? Once you start sitting down and looking at that, you can secure your environment better because you're going to have employees that are more in control of their person. And that's the hardest thing for any sort of an organization, is ensuring that their people aren't going to accidentally do something just because they're
Human.
scared, they're worried, they're dealing with a lot of stuff at home and they overlook the detail. So that's, I don't know, that's just my ramblings.
Yeah. No, I don't have too much more to add that hasn't already been discussed, but specific to supply chain attacks, again, there is an assumed level of trust associated with a thing that
Mm-hmm.
is then the vulnerability that is used and exploited to carry out the attack. So, in the most innocent of examples, we all have furry friends in our life, little dog, little cat, little pet at home that we like taking care of. What's difficult to do sometimes is get your dog to take certain medication if they ever have to. So
Peanut
what
butter.
do? We supply chain attack our pet. And what we do is we put something in their food that they trust, that they know is good, because the medicine stinks and they're not interested in it, and they don't want it. They don't like the texture. They don't trust it. They've never seen it before. So where do we go? We go to their food bowl because we're terrible people, and
A little bit of Trojan, a
we
little bit of
exploit
man
the
of many.
little Trojan horse, exactly like the Battle of Troy. And so, but what we're doing is we're exploiting that trust in the most innocent way to ensure, in this case, Matt was looking for a positive example of a supply chain attack. If you've ever given your dog medication after a procedure or surgery, or your cat, you've done a supply chain attack without even knowing it. But this is the concept, and this is the reason why we bring this up, is that there is something trusted inherently that is overlooked as a potential space for something to be introduced, right? And so now in the cybersecurity realm, this is in a myriad of different ways this can happen. Known good software gets an update.
Mhm.
Known good hardware is physically sabotaged, right? As we've
Mm-hmm.
seen in the case of Lebanon and Syria. Known good, or a suspectedly known good, right? And I say that as in like, it's one thing if I have my phone and my phone is sabotaged, right? That's known good hardware. If my phone is swapped for a phone that looks identical to it, then that's an exchange, right? You sabotage the actual equipment rather than whatever. But the whole point is that there are many different ways this can happen. People do this daily with phishing emails. They're injecting a known good concept or topic or theme or something that is going to put your guard down, exactly as Matt outlined, from the sake of the emotion. The human emotion is a pressure plate. If you can hit the plate in the right time in the right place, the guard is down, the gate is
Mhm.
open, you walk right through. And so, but I think what we want listeners and viewers to catch is that every form of our lives, whether it's business, whether it's personal, has a pressure plate that can drop the gate and let threat actors in if we're not at least cautious. Doesn't mean be hypersensitive or hyper suspicious of everything. Doesn't mean look for the sabotage and everything. But again, the
Stay
supply chain
vigilant.
attack. You could have expect an Amazon package, and it has Amazon tape on it, and you immediately assume it's Amazon. I didn't check the doorbell tape if it was or not. I assume the guy outside that's driving an Amazon truck works for Amazon, but we've seen these attacks in other cases where home robbers will pull up in like a van labeled as a residential AC unit, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this is, again, there's a social engineering element to it to
Mhm.
ensure that the victim is not suspecting of the attack. And then there's an exploitation point of it, right? And so, again, these can come in many different ways, but specifically what we're seeing in Lebanon is the real-time effects of something that we can certainly say is 1,000 miles away, and we can certainly say beepers and radios are not current technology, but it ought to cause you to wonder, just like we talked about last week, the timing's impeccable. We talked about last week the privacy practices of apps on our phones. and mobile devices. What data are they gathering? Hey, guess what? If you're able to pull millions of different phone devices and then they scan the network at their homes and you find that 80% of American homes have a TP-Link 885 router, well, guess what you can do? You could carry out, if you want to do some bad stuff, you could carry out an attack and figure out, hey, I know at least 80% of the population has a TP-Link 885 router. Let me figure out how to exploit that, and I could take out 80% of the country. And this is why those privacy practices make such a difference in security, is that they're not entitled to that information, nor should they have any business getting it. And so protect your data. Be cognizant of, number one, what is on your phone and your mobile devices, but even more importantly, as we're discussing this week, is where you source them. I'm a huge fan of recycling, giving things a second life, secondhand, right? Like whether it's thrift stores with clothes, whether it's refurbished with devices. I'd much rather give devices a second life, or be the proponent of giving a device a second life to keep it out of a landfill. But there are very easy ways to get exploited when looking for refurbished hardware. Could be a TV, could be a phone, could be a tablet, could be anything.
No, that's a great point, Mike. So, a question that has been surfacing is, has there been any other notable incidents where supply chain attacks were linked to malfunctioning devices, similar to the recent cases in Lebanon, to your knowledge?
You know, I go back to Colonial Pipeline, but Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, that was a ransomware payload that took systems offline to prevent oil from flowing on the eastern coast. But I don't know if it was
It took systems down, yeah. It
Certainly.
wasn't necessarily supply chain.
Certainly, right. There was cause and effect, but to Matt's point, yeah, there was no supply chain. I'll give you an example of a unintentional supply chain attack, and it wasn't an attack, it was a supply chain type outage. Was the recent CrowdStrike outage where 8 million devices, I'm just saying, like, something went out via a trusted source and it took 8 million devices offline. It wasn't an attack. We have no reason as of today, with today's data as far as September 19th, to keep the comment section at bay, to believe it was an attack, but it was indeed a demonstration, just like Matt said in the beginning, of a supply chain outage, right? What was the supply chain? Well, there was a trusted source of update code.
Best internal attack ever.
It was the very few things will ever come close to the scale of it.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting about the Lebanon incident is the kinetic impact, the pain inflicted. Like, there was tangible bodily harm done by something like this. And so where you look at Colonial Pipeline and you say this is an attack on supply lines, which is resources unable to get to people because of the outage. Then you look at CrowdStrike, and that is a denial of service incident where now 8 million machines can't function because of the, again, trusted supply in the form of updates being sent. Again, there's nothing that we know about it being an attack, but by the nature of the theme, we're trying to put these examples together. But more so with Lebanon, this is the, I would say, of our time, history making for coordinated physical kinetic harm. I mean, it's wild. So again, we're not making moral claims. We're not saying one side's this, one side's that, but we are acknowledging that there is historical precedent for these type of attacks, whether they're intentional, CrowdStrike unintentional, things of that nature. But again, trying to galvanize the understanding for listeners of what is supply chain, what does it mean, and how is it relevant to our daily lives? Because again, we take groceries in our homes every day. We take subscriptions and services and media and all of these things into our homes every day, where we have our trusted devices and families. So
it's relatable to all of us.
Yeah, it's definitely relevant. Definitely relevant.
Yeah, I think another thing to keep in mind too is not only did these devices implode and cause harm, but another thing to think about is the communication aspects. They took out their communications as well as an organization or a group of individuals. So, to wrap things up, how can fostering better communication and collaboration between departments help organizations prevent both supply chain attacks and internal cyber threats? Because at the end of the day, communication is key.
I'll let you start with that one, Mike.
Yeah, no, it's, again, I think the theme being is we are integrating technology into our daily lives at home on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. We have gaming consoles. We have home security systems. We have laptops, desktops, tablets, phones, learning, like even Leap Start learning pads and all of these things. There's baby monitors. There's sound machines, right? There are so many smart fridges, smart home cooking appliances. You can get a sous
Smart
vide that hooks
toaster.
up. Yeah, you can get a sous vide that
Yeah.
hooks up to your Wi-Fi. It's like it'll send you a message on your phone that your dinner's ready. Like, I think it's just before we as consumers rapidly embrace the function and the feature, we need to closely consider what are we exchanging in trade of that. You know, whether that's data, whether that's time, whether that's money. Obviously, these devices aren't cheap. But I would, again, my biggest, most practical takeaway is when you are buying things, because Facebook Marketplace is huge. I've sold things on Facebook Marketplace, clearing out the garage, trying to make some space, you know, get a couple extra bucks for the family to go out this weekend, whatever it is. But, you know, when you're buying things secondhand, just double, triple, quadruple check anything you buy online, anything you buy in person. You know, I mean, practically
Test it and make
speaking,
sure that it works
yeah,
beforehand. Look for any abnormalities. Do a little bit of research and see if you're buying a specific, say you're buying an iPhone. You can actually look, and there are specific model numbers that are on the back of the device. So if you're buying, say, a 128 gig model phone, there's a specific code that will be on the back. Everything means something: color, size, storage. If you're buying something and it's advertised as a specific object, validate that you're getting the object that you're actually looking for.
right.
Prevent somebody from, doing any kind of a man in the middle or a supply chain attack and putting something in your hands that could put you in jeopardy.
Yeah, that's a great example. Even just validating the VIN on a vehicle. How many times
Mm-hmm.
have you done checking the
Yep,
Carfax?
yep.
Having that
Great
information is
example.
important.
It's
Yeah.
a
The
great
police do that for
example.
me quite frequently when they pull me over.
Yeah,
But before you purchase a vehicle, that is something that everyone does. You check the Carfax. Has it
right,
been in a wreck? Has it
right.
has it had
Look at the
any
history of it.
Mhm.
malfunctions? Was there any
Yep,
recalls? You should be doing the same thing for your devices.
yep.
And that, I'm glad you bring that up, because unfortunately, Facebook Marketplace, a lot of people will list a vehicle and say, "Oh, there's never been any accident,"
Right.
or minor accident but was repaired, but yet it has a salvage title. You can't have a minor accident, have something
Right.
repaired, but also have a salvage title on it. That means that there was enough damage that the insurance company said, "Screw this, we're not fixing it."
Yeah.
That means that you're buying something that's probably a lemon. So be careful. Look at those things. Now, Mike, another example of a really good supply chain attack that was inadvertent: um, TVs that had webcams on them.
Yep.
There
Oh,
were uh, certain TVs, I believe, I can't remember the manufacturer, I think it was TCL, that unfortunately there was a vulnerability. No, it was LG. It was LG. My bad. It was LG. There that had a vulnerability in them that you could literally take over control of the TV. You could turn the webcam on, but not the actual video aspect. You could just trigger the audio. You could listen to anything that was going on. Even more fun, based on the way that it was designed and the vulnerability, you could connect to that TV and then jump to other machines in the environment that were on the same network. It
yeah.
gave you a foothold, and nobody even knew that that foothold was there. And it was because of one of the OSs that they had built into the device, that they hadn't patched it. So, I mean, that's kind of an example of the things that you have to look out for. That's something nobody
Exactly.
would think of. Who the hell's going to sit there and think my TV is listening to me?
Right.
Besides any of us that
Well,
work in threat intelligence, that are honestly worried about every device that has any form of a speaker on it or a microphone.
Right.
another scary thing, I am a new mother, so I did a lot of research on nanny cams, and a lot
Yep.
of scary
Mm-hmm.
things that were popping up were the nanny cams that allowed you to move the camera around,
Yep.
speak to your child, watch your
Yep.
child, have all those functions connect to the internet and your phone on an app. Well, those can also
Right.
be exploited, and
Correct.
bad actors were speaking to children or
Oh yeah,
toddlers while they were in their room watching them and things of that
Right.
nature. Like, these are scary things, and these are things that, we find important, and this is why we host the safety brief and post these
Right.
blogs, because we want people to be aware of these
Right.
vulnerabilities and take the steps that are needed. So at the end of the day, our end goal is always just awareness,
Right.
for everyone. So
No, 100% Elizabeth. And even to that point, which is, it's a great example, but again, it goes back to the point is when we buy these self-proclaimed marketed smart devices, we have to ask ourselves, what are we giving up? What are we
yeah,
giving up? What are we exchanging? What are we sacrificing in the name of this feature or function? Everybody thinks like, oh, well, I'm just paying another $80 and I get another feature.
Mm-mm.
I promise you're sacrificing some form of privacy, some giving up some form of surveillance of legitimate form. These are not, outrageous claims. There are many news stories, many factual accounts of what Elizabeth had talked about with nanny cams, security cams being hacked. Now somebody's talking to you on the other end, like because they're on your Wi-Fi and you're connected to your neighbor's Wi-Fi. All of these things. So again,
There are some things that do not need to be connected to the internet.
100%.
I
yeah,
don't believe you need a refrigerator that can tell you when you are low on milk
Yep.
while you're at the office. If you're too lazy to figure out you're low on milk before you go to the office, then you know what? Go when you get home.
Right.
yeah,
You don't need your refrigerator saying, "Hey, while you're on the way home, this is a recipe you could cook while you have
Right.
all these ingredients that are in your refrigerator."
you gotta
Exactly.
think too, it's all recon for bad actors, whether
It
Oh
it's
yeah.
is.
malicious actors for cyber or if they're wanting to do actual physical
Or
harm.
ad
If I
companies, right?
know that
Yeah, like
you're
somebody's
needing
getting that data
milk,
and
yeah,
somebody's going to use it against you. Yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
throwing this out there. It is kind of cool to play Doom on your refrigerator.
it is cool.
never done it.
You just got to ask yourself what
I
you're
have a very
sacrificing.
basic refrigerator, yeah.
Probably all the time to prepare dinner, and they're going to be like, "Is the food ready, Matt?" And it's like, "Well, I preheated the oven, but
I preheated the oven.
I got to
Why do I
finish
hear
this level first before I can
The
open the
refrigerator.
fridge."
The
Right.
refrigerator distracted me. Well,
This is
pretty
speaking of
much.
time, that's all the time we have for today. We
Yeah.
went a little bit over, but remember, regardless of the cause or circumstance of an incident, whether involving legacy systems or latest technology, we all play a role in spreading awareness. It's essential for everyone to know what to look out for. Thank you both for tuning in and sharing your insights. And thank you to our listeners or watchers for tuning in this discussion. Don't forget, we go live and post new episodes every Thursday between 2 and 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And we hope to see you next time. As always, stay frosty.